right, is it true? Are we live finally? Check both chats, make sure we're good. Okay. Looks like we are finally live. Yep. All right. I apologize about all the delays, guys. Nothing I can do about the weather, though, but I am glad to be here. It has been a very fruitful couple of weeks in terms of insights and revelations. I've been studying a lot about narcissism. My mother had NPD, and just so much I've been able to come to terms with and integrate, and it didn't just alter my understanding of myself or enhance it. It also tells us a lot about what's going on in the macro world by looking at this. So tomorrow night, assuming there are no major storms, we're finally going to get to the narcissist video. And in the meantime, back into Eliphas Levi. This is going to be a great one. This book has been tremendous revelation. Another book that I recommend is Eighth Circuit Ascension by Dr. Rachel Turetsky and Dr. Douglas Wingate. They're going to be guests on the podcast as soon as I finish the book. Definitely highly recommended. It is the operator's manual for being a human being that we have always needed and finally have. It's basically a sort of compilation or a synthesis of Stanislav Grof, Dr. Leary, Robert Anton Wilson, and a few others. Wingate is a doctor of Chinese medicine, and Turetsky is a occult practitioner that is also a PhD psychologist. So really looking forward to that conversation. Let me check in with the chat, make sure that our audio and everything is good. I shouldn't have blown this up yet. Until I check in and see, do we have audio? Do we have any peoples? How's it going, guys? All right, I don't see any complaints about the audio, so I'm going to assume we're good. Let's get into it, I suppose. I know I had a big rant planned going into this, but I don't remember what it was about. I actually always have a little bit of rape before I start these streams, and I took the wrong one this time, and so it was a lot stronger than I had anticipated, and it wiped my brain completely clean, which is both good and bad, But basically, if you're new here, Eliphas Levi was a tremendous genius, well-versed in the sciences, as all adepts are supposed to be, and he wrote a tremendous volume of works on the occult, and this is one of them. And it is almost indescribably important in this moment. We really are standing at the crossroads of a tremendous moment in human history. And whenever you're at a crossroads, there's a chance of meeting Hermes. Hermeneutics actually is the study of thinking, basically, and being, and revelation. And the kind of knowledge that is conferred upon a person by the study of this kind of material. And it's not really even the study, it's the study and the experience, primarily, the gnosis, that is a result of having a certain sort of intellectual and spiritual disposition. And the consequence of it is that a person cannot be deluded, they cannot be fooled, they cannot be misled. There are equations for truth. that are just as reliable as a Fourier transform or the Euler formula. They're no different. And it occurred to me the other day in a greater degree of magnitude, I guess, than it has in the past, that if people were taught this kind of illuminated thinking from the beginning, the universe is holographic. And so if you understand the true meaning of as above, so below, you understand the law of octaves, you understand the principle of correspondence. When you set about your intellectual education, all of the knowledge is going to fall into place so much more easily and organic. It is a tremendous disservice and injustice that this type of knowledge has been occulted from humanity and demonized. And so here we are tonight on a mission to make that right. So chapter 11, the magical chain, manas, force. The great magical agent, by us termed the astral light, by others the soul of the earth, and designated by old chemists under the names of azot and magnesia. Azot is basically mercury, and magnesia is magnesium sulfate. These were two essential components in the derivation of the Philosopher's Stone, particularly mercury. Mercury was believed to be the substance that allows transmutation to occur, the first metal. And indeed, it is one proton away from gold. And in 1935, I believe it was, 38, we first discovered that you can indeed knock a proton off of mercury and transmute it into gold. And there's a lot more to unpack on that subject, but I talk about it a lot, so I would just refer you to any one of my other streams where I go into that subject in depth. But there's an obvious connection between Mercury, the elemental Mercury, and Hermes Mercury. The transmutation of the lead of everyday experience into the gold of higher consciousness is the fundamental great work of every sentient being. It is also the one fundamental process that is occurring in the universe, according to the Kabbalah and also according to Penrose. That we have light that becomes frozen in matter, and then it is redintegrated back into light. That prima materia is converted into the Philosopher's Stone on all levels of creation. This occult, unique, and indubitable force is the key of all empire, the secret of all power. It is the winged dragon of Medea, the serpent of the Edenic mysteries. It is the universal glass of vision, the bond of sympathies, the source of love, prophecy, and glory. What is it? It's electromagnetic energy. This connection between electromagnetism and consciousness is an all-pervasive theme throughout the science of the Magi. And it is only in the last decade or so, and even the last few years in particular, that we are really starting to uncover that fact from a scientific perspective. Exciting times. To know how to avail oneself of this agent is to be the trustee of God's own power. All real, effective magic, all occult force is there, and its demonstration is the sole end of all genuine books of science. To possess oneself of the great magical agent, there are two operations necessary: to concentrate and project, or in other words, to fix and to move. Fixity has been provided as the basis and guarantee of movement by the author of all things. The magist must go to work in like manner. It is said that enthusiasm is contagious, and why? Because it cannot be produced in the absence of collective faith. Faith produces faith. To believe is to have a reason for willing. To will with reason is to will with power. Not, I say, with an infinite, but with an indefinite power. What operates in the intellectual and moral world obtains still more in the physical. And when Archimedes was in want of a lever to move the world, what he sought was simply the great magical arcanum. I would interject here that this is the reason why our society has been engineered along the lines that it has. Without any fundamental purpose, all will, all desire is ephemeral. It is unfocused. It is unconcentrated. And it's not aligned with universal forces that would reinforce and substantiate it, give it momentum, and help it to find its proper trajectory. It is gunpowder, unconfined, steam lost in the void. One arm of the androgynous figure of Henry Coonrod bore the word coagula, and the other solve. To collect and diffuse are nature's two words, but after what manner can we accomplish these operations with the astral light or the soul of the world? Concentration is by isolation, and distribution by the magical chain. Isolation consists in absolute independence for thought, complete liberty for the heart, and perfect continence for the senses. Every man who is possessed by prejudices and fears, every passionate person who is slave of his passions, is incapable of concentrating or coagulating, according to the expression of Coonrod, the astral light or soul of the earth. All true adepts have been independent, even amidst torture, sober, and chaste till death. The explanation of such anomaly is this: in order to dispose of a force, you must not be surprised by this force in a way that it may dispose of you. But then cry out those who seek only in magic for a method of inordinately satisfying the lusts of nature. What good is a power which must not be used for your own satisfaction? Unhappy creatures who ask, if I told you, how could you grasp it? Are pearls nothing because they are worthless to the hoard of Epicurus? Did not Curtius prefer the government of those who had gold than its possession by himself? Must we not be something removed from the common man when we must pretend to be God? Moreover, I grieve to deject or discourage you, but I am not devising the transcendental sciences. I teach them, defining their immutable necessities and the presentation of their primary and most inexorable conditions. Pythagoras was a free, sober, and chaste man. Apollonius of Tyana and Julius Caesar were both of repellent austerity. The sex of Paracelsus was suspected, so foreign was he to the weakness of love. Raymond Lilly carried the severity of life to the most exalted point of asceticism. Jerome Cardan exaggerated the practice of fasting till he nearly perished of starvation. If we may accept tradition, Agrippa, poor and buffeted from town to town, almost died of misery rather than yield to the caprice of a princess who insulted the liberty of science. What then made the felicity of these men? The knowledge of great secrets and the consciousness of power. It was sufficient for those great souls. Must one be like unto them in order to know what they knew? Quite a few things to unpack there, but one of the things he's alluding to is that once a person is self-realized, once the dissonance and interference patterns have been removed from their being, the reason that they can be so steadfast, that they're unmoved by threats or torture, is that they have fallen into homeostasis. They are in congruence. They have been swept up into the trajectory of the forces of nature in the universe. These things dictate their conduct. Their will and their determination is absolute because it is not determined by their ego. It is an expression of this electromagnetic force that some call God. Assuredly not, and the existence of this book is perhaps a case in point. But in order to do what they did, it is absolutely necessary to take the means which they took. But what did they actually accomplish? They astonished and subdued the world. They reigned more truly than kings. Magic is an instrument of divine goodness or demoniac pride. But it is the annihilation of earthly joys and the pleasures of mortal life. Why study it, ask the luxurious. Merely to know it, and possibly after to learn mistrust of stupid unbelief or puerile credulity. Men of pleasure, and half of these I count for so many women, is not gratified curiosity highly pleasurable? Read therefore without fear, you will not be magicians against your will. Readiness for absolute renunciation is, moreover, necessary only in order to establish universal currents and transform the face of the world. There are relative magical operations, limited to a certain circle, which do not need such heroic virtues. We can act upon passions by passions, determine sympathies or antipathies, hurt even and heal, without possessing the omnipotence of the magus. In this case, however, we must realize the risk of a reaction in proportion to the action, to which we may easily fall a victim. All this will be explained in our ritual. In other words, some people are musicians to the extent that they cannot do anything else. They go to school for it. They practice constantly. They learn to compose. You know, their level of dedication leaves absolutely no room for anything else in their life. But many people just play the guitar. Almost every dude on earth, it seems like, plays the guitar to some extent. You know, this is the same level of commitment. The thing is, the gains are commensurate with effort, of course. You know, in fact, I'll give you an example since we're talking about music that I really just, I mean, this is something that I've known, but it hit me on another level the other night because I found an AI that can transcribe music. So I started feeding it a bunch of live Grateful Dead performances. And I was playing Jerry Garcia's improvisations. And I realized that it's almost like scanning a QR code. That the circuitry of this person that is, you know, more intelligent than I am, I'm sort of inculcating the circuitry of his being by mapping how he thought. And the music is full of recognition of opportunities that no one else sees, like certain patterns that all guitarists play. He'd play one note differently. And it's, you know, it serves a bunch of different purposes. It's a better choice, but no one apparently thinks of it, except for this apparent genius. You know, the obvious is hidden. But then after the inculcation of this, you are going to see those opportunities in real life just as he did. And so, you know, to develop a level of mastery where you're capable of scanning that QR code is going to catalyze your evolutionary process. So, but at what cost? You know, I've had to spend 10 hours a day locked in a room, driving myself mad, probably damaged my health even, you know, at the level of commitment. And the thing is, you never know when you pick up a guitar how you're going to end up. It's almost like trying a hard drug. You don't know that you're not going to get swallowed up by it. And sometimes when you get swallowed up by these things, you'll get destroyed by them. So, all things to be aware of. To make the magic chain is to establish a magnetic current which becomes stronger in proportion to the extent of the chain. We shall see in the ritual how these currents can be produced and what are the various modes of forming the chain. Mesner's trowel was an exceedingly imperfect magic chain. Several great circles of Illuminati in different northern countries possess more potent chains. Even that association of Catholic priests celebrated for their occult power and their unpopularity is established upon the plan and follows the conditions of the most potent magical chains, and herein is the secret of their force, which they attribute solely to the grace or will of God, a vulgar and cheap solution for every mystery of power and influence or attraction. In the ritual, it would be our task to estimate the sequences of truly magical ceremonies and evocations which make up the great work of vocation under the name of the exercises of St. Ignatius. This magical chain, one expression of it is lineages of initiation. And if you think about a chemical chain, you must conform to certain parameters in order to have to develop a successful chain. And this is why when we accept initiation in a tradition, we are making a magical oath to conform to certain strictures and to operate within certain parameters. And this is to maintain the purity and the substance of the magical chain. Microcosm, macrocosm. When you have entered into a lineage like that, you then are creating another magical chain in microcosm in your life, where each event is a link in that chain. And they must all fall into a certain framework in order to maintain the chain. All enthusiasm propagated in society by a series of communications and practices in common produces a magnetic current and continues or increases by the current. The action of the current is to carry away and often to exalt beyond measure persons who are impressionable and weak, nervous organizations, temperaments inclined to hysteria or hallucination. Such people soon become powerful vehicles of magical force and efficiently project the astral light in the direction of the current itself. Opposition at such a time to the manifestations of the force is to some extent a struggle with fatality. When the youthful Pharisee Saul or Shaul threw himself with all the fanaticism and all the determination of a sectarian across the aggressive line of Christianity, he unconsciously placed himself at the mercy of a power against which he thought to prevail, and hence he was struck down by a formidable magnetic flash, doubtless the more instantaneous by reason of the combined effect of cerebral congestion and sunstroke. The conversion of the young Israelite, Alphonsus of Ratisbonne, is a contemporary fact which is absolutely of the same nature. We are acquainted with a sect of enthusiasts whom it is common to deride at a distance and to join, despite oneself, as soon as they are approached, even with a hostile intention. I will go further and affirm that magical circles and magnetic currents establish themselves and have an influence according to fatal laws upon those on whom they can act. Each of us is drawn within a circle of relations which constitutes his world and to the influence of which he is made subject. The lawgiver of the French Revolution, that man whom the most spiritual nation in the whole world acknowledged as the incarnation of human reason, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, was drawn into the most lamentable action of his life, the desertion of his children, by the magnetic influence of a libertine circle and a magical current of tabla-de-He. I have no idea how to pronounce that. Tabla-de-He. What the hell is that mark supposed to be? Hote? Yeah, I have no idea. He describes it simply and ingenuously in his confessions, but it is a fact which has remained unobserved. Great circles very often make great men, and vice versa. There are no unrecognized geniuses, there are eccentric men, and the term would seem to have been invented by an adept. The man who is eccentric in his genius is one who attempts to form a circle by combating the central attractive force of established chains and currents. One of the reasons we see the political dynamics in the United States that we do in the moment is exactly this. This chain has been allowed to develop, to fortify, and to expand unchanged over decades. And so the magnetic draw of the central attractor is just more and more powerful, and it is more and more succinctly of its essence. If that makes sense. So the adept is immune to this. and it is his destiny to be broken or to succeed. Now, what is the twofold condition of success in such a case? A central point of stability and a preserving circular action of initiative. This is really why the yellow path is the path of cowards. This is something that most people do not want. They would rather have a comfortable, even ride, not rock the boat, and not risk everything. Like in my case, I have one choice in life: to pursue one aim and act in accordance with one current. If I succeed, then I succeed. But if I do not, I fail. There's no middle ground, there's no plan B. And I can tell you for sure that the alternation of impending success and failure is just as stressful as people would imagine that it is. And when you feel like you're in a line with a sort of divine current and it lets you down, it's different and more painful, I think, than just personal failure. So it is an intense path to choose, but in reality, it should be the divine birthright of every person. And in a world where each individual was acting in accordance with this true will as prime directive, the support system would be much greater, because this would be the norm as opposed to what we have in reality right now. Now, what is the twofold condition of success in such a case? A central point of stability and preserving circular action of initiative. The man of genius is one who has discovered a real law and is thereby possessed of an invincible, active, and grinding power. He may die in the midst of his work, but that which he has willed come to pass in spite of his death, and is indeed often ensured thereby, because death is a veritable assumption for genius. When I shall be lifted up from the earth, said the greatest of initiators, I will draw all things after me. Let me check in with the chat again and make sure that I haven't lost my internet, or because that's always a... Are we getting it choppy? I'm seeing my bit rate is lower than the recommended rate. I don't know if that's actually causing any issues. Do I think music theory was invented by magicians? 100% it was. It was invented by Pythagoras. The system that we use today is like the first note, if you just take a whole length of string and pluck it, that's the one, right? And this is God. This is where all the other things want to return at the end of the cycle. Then the two is half that plucked, right? And it is the introduction of duality, the first minor chord. The wink your third eye thrice, if you know what I mean. The law of threes. The chord is three notes, the triad, the trinity, the first three elements, stabilized by the fourth, and so on and so forth. So yeah, it absolutely was. And I've been meaning to do videos about this, because the occult correspondences are crazy with music theory. And it's not because Pythagoras what inculcated these things into the system as a magician. It's because the system is derived from nature. And that makes these things reflections of nature. And it's like a microcosm of the macrocosm. And there's way more to it, like octaves, right? The law of octaves does not just exist in music, it also exists in chemistry and a lot of other systems. One more thing on this subject, actually. I just posted a video in the community where somebody was demonstrating John Coltrane, the great jazz saxophonist, version of the circle of fifths. And the circle of fifths that we generally use, it's based on the major scale. Well, he changed it to the chromatic scale, which gives it 12 tones, like the zodiac. And when you connect the octaves, you get a pentagram with 12, the zodiac around it. And the moods and whatnot that are generated reflect the zodiacal signs. And furthermore, if you do this based on the tritone, which is like a diminished, anyways, the opposite basically of a tritone is an augmented chord. And when you connect the augmented chords, you get a descending and ascending hexagram in front of this pentagram. So magicians are still contributing to the development of music theory. In fact, there's a new system, Barry Harris's, is it major 6 diminished, I guess? We can't go down this rabbit hole right now. A lot of you guys might not even be musicians. You're not going to know what the hell I'm talking about. But I'll make a video and explain it all because it's totally worth it. So thank you for asking that question. I've been meaning to do that forever, and it's more than time. By the way, you guys, hit the like button, please. Share, subscribe. Consider becoming a patron. We are demonetized, so if you appreciate this content, also you can get FaceTime with me. You can get guitar lessons. You can get discounts on retreats and whatnot. If you have been a patron for a long time, you can join our patron-only Discord. You have access to 6 or 7 years now of premium material that is very similar to the stuff that we're working on here. So I do appreciate that. You can make one-time contributions in the, there's options in the chat and in the descriptions of videos, and we do appreciate your support. So the law of magnetic currents is that of the movement of the astral light itself, which is always double and augments in an opposite sense. A great action invariably paves the way for a reaction of equal magnitude, and the secret of phenomenal successes consists entirely in the foreknowledge of reactions. Thus did Chateaubriand, penetrated with disgust at the Saturnalia of the Revolution, foresee and prepare the immense success of his genius of Christianity. To oppose oneself to a current at the beginning of its revolution is to court being destroyed by that current. Like the great and unfortunate Emperor Julian, to oppose oneself to a current which has run its ground is to take the lead of a contrary current. The great man is he who comes seasonably and knows how to innovate opportunely. In the days of the apostles, Voltaire would have found no echo for his utterances and might have been merely an ingenious parasite at the banquets of Tramalcion. Now, at the epoch wherein we live, everything is ripe for a fresh outburst of evangelical zeal. Don't you know? And Christian devotion, precisely by reason of the prevailing general disillusion, egoistic positivism, and public cynicism of the coarsest interests. The success of certain books and the mystical tendencies of minds are unequivocal symptoms of this widespread disposition. We restore and we build churches only to realize more keenly that we are void of belief, only to long the more for it. Once more does the whole world await its Messiah, and he cannot tarry in his coming. Let a man, for example, come forward who by rank or by fortune is placed in an exalted position, a pope, a king, even a Jewish millionaire. And let this man publicly and solemnly sacrifice all his material interest for the weal of humanity. Let him make himself the savior of the poor, the disseminator, and even the victim of doctrines of renunciation and charity, and he will draw around him an immense following. He will accomplish a complete moral revolution in the world, but the high place is before all things necessary for such a personage. Because in these days of meanness and trickery, any word issuing from the lower ranks is suspected of interested ambition and imposture. Yea, then who are nothing, yea, who possess nothing, aspire not to be apostles or messiahs. If you have faith and would act in accordance therewith, get possession, in the first place, of the means of action, which are the influence of rank and the prestige of fortune. Now, that's some gangster shit that, you know, we have a real problem with. But we have this presumption that the spiritual person wants no wealth. They want no power. But then we have this sort of antinomy that manifest as people that want power, not wanting anything to do with spirituality. This is not good. And so I've always been of the position that if a person is first in alignment, they actually will, if they have real empathy and something other than just selfishness driving them to just sit and detach, save yourself kind of attitude, they will pursue wealth and power, because in this world, some of the laws, the rules are dictated to us and not by us. And as long as we don't have anyone willing to lead and able to position themselves to do so, we are absolutely doomed. And the thing is, an adept speaking the language properly will be understood by everyone and anyone. This is one of the reasons that we value scientific education so highly, because we know that in order to reach the muggle with the transcendental mindset, we have to be able to speak their language and validate it on their terms. And we are at a point now where there is a convergence of evidence in favor of the position that Levi and Crowley and myself and many others have taken. But you cannot shun power and wealth. But you have to be self-engineered to maintain the course, having acquired these things. The Templars failed at this, and they were advanced. This is one of the reasons it almost never happens. In olden times, gold was manufactured by science. Nowadays, science must be remade by gold. Damn. Wow. Speaking of the Templars, in olden times, gold was manufactured by science. Nowadays, science must be remade by gold. We have fixed the volatile. We must now volatize the fixed. In other words, we have materialized spirit. Now we must spiritualize matter. The most sublime utterance now passes unheeded if it goes forth without the guarantee of a name, that is to say, of a success which represents a material value. What is the worth of a manuscript? That of the author's signature among the booksellers? That established reputation known as Alexander Dumas at T, I don't know what that is, represents one of the literary guarantees of our time, but the House of Dumbass is in repute only for the romances which are its exclusive production. Let Dumbass devise a magnificent utopia or discover a splendid solution of the religious problem, and no one will take them seriously, despite the European celebrity of the panurge of modern literature. We are in the age of acquired positions, where everyone is appraised according to his social and commercial standing. Unlimited freedom of speech has produced such a strife of words that no one inquires what is said, but who has said it. If it be Rothschild, His Holiness pens the 9th, or even Monseigneur Duplan-Lou, it is something. But if it be Tartempian, it is nothing. Were he even, which is possible after all, an unrecognized prodigy of genius, knowledge, and good sense. Hence, to those who would say to me, if you possess the secret of great successes and of a force which can transform the world, why do you not make use of them? I would answer, this knowledge has come to me too late for myself, and I have spent over its acquisition the time and the resources which might have enabled me to apply it. I offer it to those who are in a position to avail themselves of it. It's kind of how I feel. Illustrious men, rich men, great ones of this world who are dissatisfied with that which you have, who are conscious of a nobler and larger ambition, will you be fathers of a new world? Kings of a rejuvenated civilization? A poor and obscure scholar has found the lever of Archimedes, and he offers it to you for the good of humanity alone, asking nothing whatsoever in exchange. The phenomena which have quite recently perturbed America and Europe as regards to table turning and fluidic manifestations are simply magnetic currents at the beginning of their formation, appeals on the part of nature inviting us for the good of humanity to reestablish the great sympathetic and religious chains. As a fact, stagnation in the astral light would mean death to the human race, and torpor in this secret agent has already been manifested by alarming symptoms of decomposition and death. This is actually kind of where AI comes in. I was thinking about this earlier, that I mentioned the Eighth Circuit Ascension, the book by Turetsky and Wingate that I've been reading. And one of the things it deals with is what we might call parapsychological phenomena. I am a person that has experienced a tremendous